Welcome to my cozy corner. I use this corner for all things cozy. Um, I do some crafting here, I scroll on my phone here, and most importantly, I read here. So it is my cozy corner slash book nook. Um, Today we are talking books. I am doing Ellie Abdal's 7 video challenge, and today is video number 3. Talk about something you're passionate about. I love books. I do. I love them. And so I have gathered 4 books which have influenced me as a reader. These are all fantasy books. Fantasy is my OG genre. Love it. Okay. Other genres that I like, I read pretty broadly. Definitely read, thrillers, biographies, self-help, general nonfiction, general fiction, and a little bit of sci-fi. But my 2 favorite genres are romance, specifically queer romance, because I love character development. I feel like romance is any genre. Books are the perfect avenue for character development. But we all go into romance assuming that somebody will find love. So that's what we're expecting. Is it a romance book? If that doesn't happen, up for debate. But what you get to really play with in romance are the characters, and specifically, in my opinion, character development. Okay? So I love people. I love learning how they think, how they work, and in books, I love watching them grow. My favorite subgenre of romance is queer romance. I personally think this is where character development shines, because I find that queer romance has much more of a honestly, I feel like it's just coming along in general general romance as well, but queer romance specifically is more so about not like how do you and I navigate this conflict, like we have to break up, we can't be together, oh now we can, and instead it's more like, oh shit, I'm coming to this relationship with my own baggage, and in order to be a good partner I need to deal with my shit so that we can be together well, healthily. So I really appreciate that. I appreciate the examining yourself, figuring out your shit. Queer romance has it. If you would like a recommendation, if you've not read queer romance and you'd like to try, I would recommend Delilah Green Doesn't Care. I do not remember who it's by. Maybe I'll put in a voiceover edit. So that's a good one. And I have my friend Jamie, shout out to Jamie, a bookseller in Memphis, Tennessee, at this bookstore Novel. If you're in Memphis, go to Novel. He recently has been expanding his reading, I don't know what that's called, the genres that you read, and has been exploring romance, and he was reading it. So it's a 3-series book. It's a series of 3 books. I read, I think when the 3rd one was about to come out, I think he started reading it. I had already read the first 2, but we got to talk about it, and so he enjoyed it even as a straight presenting man. So it's a good one. Try it out if you'd like. Ashley Herring Blake. It came to me. Ashley Herring Blake is who wrote Delilah Green Doesn't Care. But we're not talking about queer romance today. We are talking about the genre that really shaped me as a reader and story lover. We're talking about fantasy. My OG favorite. Are you ready? Ella Enchanted by Gail Carson Levine. This book, if you were growing up in the 90s, then you probably have read this book and or seen the movie. Hot debate on the movie. No shade if you love it. I don't like it. Doesn't fit this. But this is a retelling of Cinderella. This is Ella. She is enchanted. Her fairy godmother showed up at her birth and gave her a sweet little blessing, which was actually a curse that she has to be obedient. And so any like accidental command, she has to follow it. So if you're at the kitchen table or the dinner table and you say, pass me that salt, she has to do it, okay? If she fights it, she gets sick, and then like she has to do it. So as with Cinderella, her mom dies, her dad remarries, she has a terrible step family. She tries to hide the curse from them. However, that's really hard to hide because we throw around commands willy-nilly in conversation and life. So they figure it out and they start to abuse it, obviously. So she becomes their, slave, housemaid. And in this book, she goes on some adventures and learns about different creatures in the world. So like magical creatures, ogres, etc. But so she goes, obviously she wants to like break her curse. So she goes on trying to like find the fairy godmother to have her lift it, and finds out that that's not going to happen. The only way that she can break it is through true love. Enter our prince. She attends the balls and they fall in love. Now, what I appreciate about this is she knew the prince before that as Ella, before she went to a masked ball and whatever. She knew the prince, and like he knew her family, and they actually like hang out, have a good time, learn about each other, have an emotional connection. It's not just like, ooh, we danced at a ball and we're so in love. So that felt more real. Then she's in love, but obviously she can't marry a prince and become queen if she has to do everything that people tell her. So he comes to propose. Her family, her stepmother is like, marry him. And she, out of true love, breaks her curse. That scene, so spoiler alert, but if you haven't read this, then too bad. Also, it's Cinderella, so like, spoiled. But I remember that scene. I remember reading that scene for the first time so distinctly. Like, I really felt it. And I think that this was the first book, or it's the first book that I can remember, where I actually like had, it wasn't just like, ooh, that's an interesting story. It was like, is she gonna be able to do it? Can she really break the curse? And like, I felt it. I got anxious about it, and I felt the struggle. So this was the first time that I really like immersed myself fully in a book and had feelings. So this is my OG favorite book. Okay. Then my friend Caitlin McCowan. This was grade school. I have no idea where you are or whatever, but you introduced me to Tamora Pierce. Okay. This book, this actually was the series that I was at her house and started reading this one. So this is Alana. I don't know. I called it Elena. Elena, the First Adventure. Tamora Pierce is a very well-known in the fantasy world, specifically for girls. She writes young adult. So this story, also like her stories she wrote them as quartets. So 4 books, 4 characters arc. What I think is interesting is that she credited in some interview somewhere, she credited the Harry Potter series for basically like teaching kids and their parents that they can read bigger books. So she would have done these as like duologies, but I guess her publisher wouldn't let her go that long. So like this is 274 pages. So it's not that long, but her originals all came in sets of four books for a story arc. She created a whole world, Tortall. It's set in like medieval times, so the times of knights. Magic was there. This is a story about Elena, who became a knight, but she's a girl and it's medieval times, so that wasn't allowed. But she's a twin, and she takes her twin's place as a knight. He goes to magic school. So they both have magic. They're twins. They both have magic. Not everybody in this world has magic, but she does. And this follows her through what's it called? Squirehood into knighthood. And it is definitely her trying to figure out who she is, right? So she goes when she's 11. Okay, she's 11 years old. She pretends to be a boy. Obviously, a lot changes for a person between 11 and 18. So definitely like, when do I reveal to my friends that I'm actually a girl? And she had to figure out, like, she had to go through puberty very much alone. So anywho, this goes through really her coming of age, and she has to kind of figure out her own, honestly, gender, like going through like you know, living masculine, but knowing that she has femininity as well, and then when she does like come out as a woman, figuring out like how to marry the two in a way that she's comfortable with. So that spoke to me very much, honestly, without me really realizing it. I didn't appreciate the gender identity exploration in this until I was older. But this is when I really got into the whole like fantasy world. This is when I really appreciated that. She has, in her world that she's created, she has multiple story arcs, different times. Some of them are like overlap, but this is the OG. This is very popular. And then my second favorite is actually my favorite. Elena is my second favorite, but she's also the original, and so it's like kind of hard to like let go of her. But my favorite is Kell. Kell is the second female in this world to become a knight, and she goes into it. They know that she is a female, and she has a very different, like, obviously, gender identity or gender expression journey. But I really liked her because she didn't have magic, but she's still, like, this one, right, Elena's special. She has magic, and she's a knight, and she's blessed by a god, the goddess. And so there's a little bit of, like, you know, you're special. But with Kell, she's just like a regular girl. She's not. She's the daughter of a ambassador, and so she's in like the basically like Asian version of this world, and learns that type of martial arts, and then comes and has to learn how to use a sword. And so that one's very much like marrying two cultures, And then also like, how do you be a female in a male-dominated world? And I really appreciate that one because she doesn't have magic. She just has her own like personality strengths, which is its own kind of magic. Anyway, so this book really got me into the world, like the world building of fantasy. Additionally, lots of adventure. Highly recommend Tamora Pierce if you've not read her. She has lots of books. If you want to start with the original, Elena, her first adventure, is where it's at. All right, so now we're getting a little more specific. So these, my first one with Ella Enchanted, I fell in love with books and fantasy in general. With Elena, I would say this one was obviously fantasy, like it's a fairy tale. I fell in love with books, and this was definitely a moment, like I remember thinking like, oh, I remember when I recognized that it was Cinderella, and I was like, oh, that's cool that you can like retell a story in a different way. And I remember, right, I got like emotionally involved. So this was definitely like made me think about books in a different way and made me really like fall in love with reading. Okay. This made me fall in love with fantasy specifically. This world building, the magic, and like how she has to learn to use her magic, and the different, like, this was my first book with a map in it. So she travels around the whole world, or like the whole region, and so the different peoples in it and their backgrounds. This one definitely made me fall in love with fantasy, and specifically like the world building. These are more specific, and this is where it definitely, this is where I start thinking about writers. Still fantasy, but for more specific reasons. The first of which, Ranger's Apprentice. This is a series written by a New Zealander, Australian. He's from over there. So this is about an orphan who, like when the kids reach a certain age, they basically get apprenticed to somebody in the village. So the cook chooses somebody, the knight chooses somebody, and then Will gets chosen by the ranger. And rangers are very secretive. He doesn't know what all that entails, but you get to go through his training. And this is where, like, I love a training scene. Section, right? Part 1 and 2 of a 3-part book should be about training, in my humble opinion. Like, I don't want just a montage where over one song we see the progression. I want to experience the progression with the person. So I fell in love specifically with the training in this one, because obviously you learn a lot about yourself in training, character development. And speaking of writing, this gentleman, who is it? John Flanagan, from Australia or New Zealand, I don't remember which. He started telling this story to his kids. He made this up as like their bedtime story, and then it got like elaborate enough, I guess, that they told him to, or somebody told him to, or he decided to start writing it down. I thought that was so cool. It also felt like, oh, you're a normal person who ended up becoming an author. Inspiring. So this book is my only book that has a male protagonist. So this one was definitely, specifically, I love a good hero in training. Okay, and this author was inspiring to me in that it felt like, ooh, anybody could be an author. If you have a good story, you can get published. Okay, so then our last one. We're still in the young adult fantasy region, but again, this is I learned specific things about what I like in fantasy, but I also learned about writing. This is Graceling by Kristin Cashore. I really like this one. I have recommended it to a few people for, like, if you want an intro to fantasy. And I do want to say this. So I feel like it's a little bit obvious. I'm not a traditional fantasy reader. Like, my brother read all, like, Tolkien, The Lord of the Rings. I had a friend in grade school who was reading it. I feel like the traditional epic fantasies, mostly it's like all plot points. I just never really felt like I learned anything about the characters. So, I have recommended this to people who like haven't really been into fantasy, but like a good character. So, this is about someone who's raised in a kingdom where magic shows up in a person by like an extraordinary talent. They have a magical ability, okay? When you have that, your eyes change color. You have two different colored eyes. So that's generally the first sign that somebody has something, is that as your eyes settle as a baby, they'll become two different colors. And then they have a special talent, but like it's a very specific special talent. And so there are some people who like never find it because it might be like, what's something crazy that you wouldn't be able to do? Like breathing in high altitude with no problem. If you never go to high altitude, you never know that, right? So, or it could be like, it's specific, okay? I was gonna say breathing underwater, but I feel like you probably would figure that out because surely at some point, I don't know, if you're told to never breathe, of course you have to hold your breath. But if you never get in like a potential drowning situation, maybe you'd never know that you can breathe underwater. So that sort of thing. There are people who like have it and don't know what it is. Basically, like the king of this kingdom is has rights over all gracelings. Okay, so the special talent is called a grace. If you have a special talent of grace, you are a graceling, hence the name. So if you are a graceling, the king can take you so that you serve the kingdom with your special talent. If he doesn't care about your talent, then you can certainly go back to your family. But if he does, then you are stuck with him. So our main character is someone who is graced, and she's very good at killing. Bum, bum, bum. And so she is basically the king's enforcer. She gets sent to take care of people. And she feels like a monster. Imagine that. This story, I thought that the magic system was very interesting. And it's big on like, oh, it's not quite what it seems. So the person that she meets and falls in love with, he also is graced. But both of them, slight spoiler here, their grace is not what it seems. The character development in here, right? She was raised to think that she is a killing machine. She is a monster. And so she asks, I feel like the biggest character development in this is she really is kind of like, who am I, right? Am I what I've been told I am? Am I my actions? Because I have killed a lot. And like, can I change those things? So that character development love. Additionally, this is very much a like go on a quest kind of fantasy. So I enjoy the story here. And the magic system I found very interesting. But in the back of this book, there is a section. Is it this book? Actually, I don't think it's this book. I think it's the second one, which I have. Let me go get it. Okay, yes. So I loved this character. I loved the character development, the story arc, everything. But then she came out with a second book, Fire. And in the back, the author, has a little essay, I would say. I don't know what to call it. She talks to her reader, okay? And it goes into the writing of a fantasy world, the whole world building. So she talks about, you know, if you're not going to be in the modern era, then you have to take out all of the modern era things. If you're going to be in a fantasy world that has a completely different, you know, history and systems, then you have to change a lot of things. This goes into language, right? Like, if they don't have Christianity, then like, is their character gonna say like, oh my God, right? What do they say instead? If you don't have our world history, are you gonna measure things in miles? Who knows? So she goes into that in addition to like, you know, oh, in fantasy, anything is possible. But as soon as you start writing and create your world's rules, you have to exist within those rules. So she talks about how in this book, she started making the world, and for her story, she needed like this sort of geographical setup / obstacle. So she put it in there, right? So like she made it like this amount of distance, but then her story needed to take X amount of time to get from here back. And so the distance that she made it, that doesn't make sense. So then she had to put mountains so that they had to go this other way, create a reason for them to go this other way and go through mountains and make it take so much longer. So like she talks about in here in this like little write-up that anything is possible in the fantasy world until you start making rules. And then how do you exist within those rules? And thinking about like all the little details, the clothes they wear, the language they use, the way that they measure and name things. Like, this is part of what I love about fantasy, is that it makes you question everything. So it's like, well, why do we use this word? Like, where is it from? And would it exist in this world? So this is very much like basically like world building, writing a world. What questions do you ask yourself? And like, I feel like it also made me think about like, how does this reflect on our world? And like, how do we think about our world based on this? Which I think is very cool. So there you have it. This is my intro to fantasy for I would say a girl, but you know, what is a girl? This is intro to fantasy for somebody who enjoys character development and questioning things. Because in the end, it's all made up. And so how Where did these things come from? Do you want to keep using them? And if you don't, what do you want to put in its place? I feel like ultimately that's what fantasy does for me, is it makes me ask, how do things work? Where do they come from? What do I want to keep? What do I want to get rid of? And what do I want to make in its place? So, I hope you enjoyed my TED Talk on young adult fantasy. And I hope that this made you think about your favorite books. If you want to try any of these, go to your local library. So I hope that you enjoyed this little foray into my reading mind. I hope that you pick up a good book and read and think and question. Oh, also, if anybody's following along, update on my thumb. I'm out of the brace. Yay! It is not fully recovered yet. And like the tendons are tight because they haven't been moving, which is how it heals. And my knuckle is swollen. And so right now, I can't do a real thumbs up. I can't get it up, y'all. Okay, I don't have an outro. I will see you in the next one.